Okay, Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Really? Do all things really work together for good? Absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. Now, please hear me when I say this. I did not say that everything is good, because I can't stand here and say how the vote went on Tuesday was good. But here's what I absolutely know, that the moment that that vote happened, this divine mind immediately began to weave it together into the greater tapestry of good for everyone. Yes. And much good has already come out of that, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. So I want to share with you some of what Charles Fillmore says. He's our co-founder from a book called Talks on Truth. Now I want you to bear in mind that what I'm going to share with you comes from somewhere in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. So I think it's interesting as we look at what has come before us in order to be where we're at today. He says, "The promise that the Garden of Eden will be restored on earth is older than the Bible. Other Bibles of other peoples far antedating the Hebrews prophesy a time when man shall possess the earth in peace and plenty, a time when the elements shall be subdued, disease and death eliminated, and immortal life in the body rise up again. It should be observed that all prophecies to this end come through some mystical channel, and it says that this is to be regained. They also agree that this condition of peace and happiness will be brought about through causes originating largely with man and his acts. In other words, its consummation will depend upon the wisdom and the energy with which men act at certain crises in history." It also includes women. I'm just reading from Charles because that's what they used at that time. "These prophets, both ancient and modern, say that we are now at one of the most vital turning points in our experience. They get at it in a variety of ways, and they differ widely in minor points, but they are unanimous in their conclusions that now is the time foretold by prophets of old and reiterated by prophets now. But it does not require a prophet's perception to discern the signs of these times. The dissolution of the old and the birth of the new are manifest in every walk of life. For instance, the thought that has been held for thousands of years about the opaqueness of matter have been shattered. The materialist and his world are no more." And I thought about how Charles Fillmore would be, like he would be doing cartwheels with all that science has proven today and all the advances of technology. This past half century has witnessed more of this than the history of all the world's records before. The past few years have accelerated this dissolution at a tremendous pace, and a prominent scientist says that the changes have been so many that the textbooks of nearly every science will have to be rewritten. It tickles me that that was them. Yet, those who are watching the mental realm know that there are still greater changes going on. The religious world of a few years ago does not exist today. There is but one sect in all Christendom that stands by its creed and carries forward its work on the old lines. All the others are shaken to their foundations. Their creeds and dogmas are skeletons in their closets, which they do not care to talk about. And I think that's interesting in how that is still present today, that we have one very strong sect that says this is the one way, the right way, and the only way. In politics and in government, the same upheavals are at work. The rights of men are no longer theories. They are about to become real conditions in the world of affairs. So from any plane of observation that may be chosen, we can assert with conviction that a crisis is here. Something is happening. All along the line are evidences of the birth of the Prince of Peace. A higher state of consciousness is bursting full-blown upon the human race. It is everywhere, and those who are most open to its influx are being rewarded. The power is abroad in the earth, and it calls to men and women and nations, come up higher. Wow. You know, this was written how many years ago? And here's the thing, that all of this has had to happen in order for us to be where we are today. And when we look back at when this was written and we see all the changes that have taken place, all the people who have been given back their rights, it's only a matter of time until everyone on the face of the planet has equal rights. And that will absolutely, positively happen. So the title of today's talk is Divine Order, Connecting the Dots. And most of us have probably done these connecting the dots. Remember these? Yeah. And most of the time you can tell what they are. Sometimes you're kind of wondering, but after the first few things. But today we're going to talk about connecting the dots in a different way. And I'm going to share this by talking about Steve Jobs. He's the CEO of Apple and Pixar Animations. And Steve did a commencement speech at Stanford University in 2005. And Steve got up there, the first thing that he said was, I never graduated from college. In fact, that he dropped out of college. So his story is that his mother was an unwed single, I guess that's like the unwed graduate student. And she didn't think she could give him the life that she thought that he deserved. And so she put him up for adoption with the caveat that whoever adopted him they both had to have a college education. So it was all set to go. Comes to the night of the birth, he pops out a boy and they wanted a girl. So they go to the next couple on the list, and the mother finds out that not only are these parents not college educated, the father hasn't even made it through high school. So the only way that she would sign the adoption papers were to say, you have to send him to college, which they agreed to do. So he said 17 years later, and rather naively, he chooses one of the most expensive colleges. And his parents, their life savings is going in to his education. And he said about 6 months into his journey, he started to realize that he wasn't really benefiting from this. He felt that college wasn't really helping him discern where he was going, and he just couldn't spend his parents' entire life savings on college, so he dropped out. Now, when he had dropped out, he immediately dropped every class that he didn't have some interest in. And he said what he started to do is he started to drop in on the classes that he was interested in. So at Reed College, one of the things that they offered was calligraphy, and he said it was perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country at that time. So he said he learned about sans serif and serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great, and that it was beautiful and it was artistically subtle and it was historical, and he found it fascinating. But he also knew that it wouldn't have any pertinent value to his life until 10 years later, when they were designing the Macintosh. And he says it all came back to him, and we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would never have had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. He says, if I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on this calligraphy class, and personal computers, as we know them today, might not have that wonderful typography as they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear 10 years later looking backwards. Again, you cannot connect the dots looking forward, but you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life. How many of us here today can look back in our life and see how the dots have connected? I'm going to say every single one of us can see how certain things in our life have had to have happened in order for us to be where we're at today. So here's the thing for me. The scripture says, all things work together for good to those who love God. And I thought, well, gosh, does that mean things don't work together for good if people don't love God? And so what makes sense to me is that things are always working together for the greater good, period. That's the grace of God. That's the goodness of God. That is the nature of God. And I am always a choice. When things occur in my life, I can be a pessimist. And I can choose to turn my vision this way, and I can look back and I can say, oh my gosh, look at what happened to me. And when this person did this to me, this is what happened in my life. And when this organization did this, and when I got this illness, this is what happened. And I'm going to have an experience. The goodness of God is always at work. But if I choose to be an optimist, and I choose to look this way, and I say, you know what? This does not feel good at all. This is not at all what I thought was going to happen. But I trust God. I trust that God always has my back. I trust that there is a divine mind, and it is always working for the greater good of everyone. Now, here's the thing. That greater good is always working, but if we're looking this way, and we're so in that victim mode, we're not even going to see how things are working together. And what I've seen in my life experience anyway is there are some people who live in that victim consciousness their entire life and who are never able to turn to look at something differently. But I see many, many more of us who are willing to say, you know what, this does not feel good. And I may not feel good in this moment, but I'm not going to keep on not feeling good. And I can choose to look a different way. And then we see clearer and we see sooner how, oh my gosh, wow, that had to happen in order for this to happen. And again, just even sharing what Charles Fillmore said, through these years of various people getting their rights, there were a lot of stopping points along that way where it seemed it wasn't going to happen. But everything had to happen in order to get where we're at today. Rob Bell says that suffering is traumatic and awful, and we get angry and we shake our fists at the heavens and we vent and rage and weep. Anybody do that? But in the process, we discover a new tomorrow, one we would have never imagined otherwise. Now, I want to share with you that from my very human perspective, my very limited mind, because of a megachurch, James River, it's the megachurch, and because of a lot of other mainstream churches in our area, we knew that on Easter Sunday, when most of the people were going to be there, that they were going to push the yes. And so my mind said, wow, they're probably going to just lick us by a landslide. And of course, we're happy to say that didn't happen, that it was like a 3%. Okay, so anyway, I didn't imagine how close this vote was going to be. I didn't imagine how many good people in our community and the surrounding communities would stand up in a solid no, and businesses in a solid no. I didn't imagine how this would connect so many people in so many ways, and that connection is going to be forever there. And on a personal level, I have to tell you, I didn't know how much stronger this was going to make me. I found myself in a situation when I was at the polls on Tuesday where a fundamentalist was, telling me, what it was and la, 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 and I just stood in my knowingness, and I did not let this person intimidate me. And when he finally said it was a choice, I was like, we need to stop this conversation right now because you don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't going to share that part, but it's true. So, the idea behind this is a divine mind. There are infinite possibilities and potentiality in divine mind. And ours is to recognize that when things fall apart, when things go opposite of what we would have liked for them to go, that we trust that God has our back no matter what. God has everybody's back, not just ours. God has everybody's back. And even in the greatest losses in life, God has our back. I shared this on a Wednesday night, but I want to share this with you today. When my husband Sean walked this earth, I loved his wisdom. And he shared this. He said, I've heard it said that God does not want me to be sick, or God's will is physical healing for all people. Well, I can't agree with these statements because they make sickness or disease bad things that are not God's will. On the contrary, when I consider the billions of years of this universe's evolution, I see millions of events that we could call catastrophes or chaotic events that were actually the very things that brought us humans into being. Stars dying, creating black holes that perfectly stretch out the distance of planets and galaxies. Planets colliding with meteors, giving rise to our Earth's perfect tilt and climate for life to occur. Volcanoes erupting, giving rise to islands and continents. Explosions, collisions, disasters, all giving birth to beauty, order, design, and us. One could have observed all this while it was happening and said, oh, the universe is sick. God doesn't want that. Or things are chaotic and in disorder. God doesn't want yet that. And yet the very impulse of the divine design at the very atomic nucleic level of all these events was no doubt pushing forward, attracting these very specific cataclysmic occurrences and bringing forth its next highest and best expression through them. So for me, this is him, this means sickness, disease, natural disasters, etc. are all in harmony with the faithful, friendly flow. I can certainly co-create things like healing, prosperity, etc., but in releasing the outpicturing of what I desire and in getting out of the how, I am co-creating with a divine manager and designer that may want to keep and use the very things that I wanted to push away. And I love that. It is that reminder that in chaotic times, so many times we forget our divine manager, our co-designer and our co-manager. And we immediately jump into, okay, this is what I have to do. I have to push this. I have to manipulate that. And the reality is, where do we go first? We go within. We go to source. We go to that place where we feel that connection. And we say, here I am. And I am choosing to trust this because I know that at this moment, everything is being woven into the greater tapestry of good for everyone. And we open ourselves up to that very thing. And I think sometimes what happens in like unity or in a new thought like this, that people think that we just immediately say, oh, that's good, oh, that's good, oh, that's good, oh, that's good. You know, something terrible happens and it's, oh, that good. I couldn't even come close on Tuesday night. As I'm watching my family and my friends in devastation over this vote, I could not for a moment think, oh, this is good. And I certainly wasn't going to say to them, this is good. What are you doing? This is good. But what we do in unity is we take the hit. We are very real about it. We recognize and we feel it, and we allow the emotions and we allow the pain and we let ourselves feel it, and then we say, you know what? I'm standing on a foundation that has my back all the time. And even though I can't see it right now, I'm going to continue to trust and to know, and here's the big thing, and I'm going to continue to remain in love and kindness. The very thing that I'm desiring is the very thing that I am needing to give. And so I'm going to stay in this place of oneness and love and kindness and compassion. And I'm still going to speak my mind when I need to, and I'm going to point to the truth when I need to. So when things don't go as planned, first of all, we take the hit. We focus on what we do have, on what's working. The reality, my friends, is that it was 3%. Wow! Wow! This wouldn't even been on the ballot years ago, and we wouldn't have had near this support. This is huge for us. There's so much. We are on a forward roll with this. We ask, and these two go together, ask for guidance, pray for revelation as to the meaning and the chaos, and surrender the outcome to your higher power or the divine, whatever it is that we're experiencing in our lives. You know, again, the first place that we go is to God. And we allow ourselves to be open and to be vulnerable there and to say, I don't understand this, and my heart is breaking. But I trust the unfoldment, and I am willing to be that vessel and that vehicle and see the good that is unfolding in this. Then choose to see everything that's happened as a vehicle for growth rather than a reason to stop. Many, many times when and there's a roadblock, we say, oh, okay, I'm just going to stop. But look at it as an experience of growth. Take life each day at a time. Don't future trip. I love that. Don't future trip. I like to call it pre-painting. Be present with what's happening now. And in Al-Anon and AA, I think one of the best things is one day at a time. One day at a time. And it's staying in that one day at a time consciousness that we are in the present moment and we're not future tripping. We're not bringing pain to the moment that hasn't even happened. And that gives us more of the ability to stay centered. And I may not be able to see how this can unfold, but if I stay right here and I don't go back, and I don't go forward, I stay right here, and I stay on my foundation, then I can stay in that consciousness and awareness but it will, and it will work together for everyone who is concerned. And then don't get caught in fear. Keep moving. Remember, life is movement, and that is absolutely true. So, today isn't just about the vote. Of course, that's been the big thing for us. It's about anything that's going on in our lives, and it's recognizing that as things are unfolding in our lives, even if we're in great times right now, but if we're experiencing some pain in some way, something has fallen apart or hasn't gone the way that we desire it, we remember for a moment to look back and say, you know what? When this happened and when this happened, I thought that it was the end of the world, and I thought that and then we find that we've moved to something different and something greater. So we take those moments to stop and say, okay, I know that this right here, it's just one of the dots. And that this dot is going to connect to the next dot and the next dot and the next dot, and I can absolutely trust it because you can. You know why? Because God's got your back every moment of every day in every circumstance. God's got your back. We just have to remember that. Namaste.